And to present one of the models that I think is just absolutely essential to have in our backpack. And I think a good model, when you see it, you go, oh, okay, that's great, I'm already doing some of that. Oh, wow, gee, I've forgotten to do a little bit of that. So we weave it in. I believe this model is helpful in relationships. I believe it's helpful in our own personal development. I think it's a model you can sit down with a student and step them through it if ever they're finding some hardship or some rough times, or indeed if we're wanting to take them to the next level or they're wishing to take themselves. The model is based on the work of this man. I first met him in the early 1990s, and being an uncouth Australian, I said, mate, how do you say your name? But I'm not going to tell you. Your first activity this morning is to tell the people next to you, one, if you had to pronounce this word, how would you pronounce it? And two, if you had to learn how to spell the word, what strategies would you employ to learn the spelling? You've only got 60 seconds. Pronunciation and spelling, go. So he looked at me, I think we were in Seattle, and he said, Chiksemach, or something like that. The best I could get was Csikszentmihalyi. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, Hungarian background, 40 years at the University of Chicago. And he was fascinated by people at their very best. How is it that some of the people in solitary confinement in Korea and in Vietnam emerged mentally stronger and alert and alive where others fell in a heap? How is it that some people on a factory floor doing seemingly mundane jobs activate a pleasure in what they're doing? How is it that some students will be able to find engagement no matter what kind of a teacher is in front of them? In regards to spelling strategies, I think one of the great learning tools of all time comes from the great Chinese philosopher. Now, I love language and I love languages, and my favourite is not a spoken language, it's a signed language. Here in Australia, my version is Auslan from our deaf community. My signing is a little bit slower, but it's such a wonderful, wonderful learning language. So the Chinese philosopher, I'll teach you it in sign language. Take your hands, please. And I need you to say to your table mates, Chungking, Chungking, Chungking. So the great Chinese philosopher, Chungking, teach your students, if they've got a big problem, do some Chungking. If they've got a big word to spell, do some Chungking. Work on the bit you can do something about. And then if you can relate it to your own life, it's magnificent. In my 7 years, I didn't intend to 7 years around the world as a hobo. I thought I'd leave Australia for 3 months. But 7 years later, I came back. And then I got to teach at a district high school for 3 months before I set up my own business. And this district high school, wonderful place in Dongra, Western Australia, crayfishing town. One of the students says to me, Mr. Cap, on the weekend, do you want to come out on the boat? My parents asked if you'd like to come out crayfishing. I said, fantastic. Now, has anyone in this room ever been seasick? It is terrible. I got on the boat. It was a 12-hour boat journey. I started vomiting after 12 minutes. So I was seasick. And then I tried some Zen to overcome it. That didn't work. I tried some transcendental meditation. Eventually in life, I'm able to laugh about my seasickness, but initially I lied about it. So it's a district high school. My surname is Capelli. For those of you who are fluent with your languages, you would know that Capelli is an Italian word meaning hair. Well, what a rude bunch of buggers you are. So yes, you've got to love irony in life. But if I was to take my shirt off, now I won't, but if I was, you would understand why it's so fitting. I get back to Dongra on the Monday after vomiting all weekend because of the seasickness, and some wit has put a huge poster up in the quadrangle of the school saying, "What's green and hairy and hangs over the side of a boat?" Mr. Capelli. So the wonderful work of Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. What he calls it, when we're at our very best, he calls it flow. Now, 40 years of research. It's probably been popularised more so in the last 5 to 6 years than at any other time, mainly because he went on TED Talks and talked a little bit about the concept. Again, I love the concept because it makes sense to us. And I'm going to start off by, my wife and I got to do some wonderful work in Japan, presenting at a variety of businesses and conferences and schools. and I learned some origami. So I need you to have a piece of paper, please. Can you take a piece of paper? And when you've got your piece of paper, the first thing I need you to do is, holding it lengthways, is to fold it in half. As best as possible with a nice, neat, crisp fold. And you might want to just turn to your teammate and say something like, oh, you're really good at this, or you're a natural, or a little bit of encouragement can be a wonderful thing. Difficult to do on your iPad, but you can give it a shot. And then we fold it again. And then, because we're becoming slightly obsessive-compulsive with this, we fold it again. So we should now have a rectangle around about this size. Now, the beauty of origami, when we open this out, it will be a whole series of children all holding hands together. Maybe not, but you should have 8 rectangles. Now, if you've got more or less than 8, it's just a mathematical kinesthetic problem and challenge that you've got. But Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, when he looked at all of these people in flow, he said it came out to 8 things. Now, each of them is simple. Coming together, there's a complexity to it. So in our origami, in your first rectangle, I'm going to ask you to draw something. Now, I'm not against words, so you can certainly use words as well, but I need you to draw a symbol in your number 1 rectangle, or if you're working on your iPad, draw it or write it in. Draw a symbol that would represent clear goals for you, clear goals. Now, West Australian background, currently living in Melbourne, so Australian rules footy goals would work for me. It might be a netball goal, it might be rugby, it might be a dartboard. But whatever will represent clear goals for you. So when you see that image, and if you're struggling with it, just glance at what your teammates are doing and gain inspiration. We used to call this cheating. We now call it scaffolding. And I'd like you to write the words clear goals. So as simple as it is, he said those people who are able to maintain some invigoration in life, they've got a clarity of goal. They know what they're aiming at. And this is possibly one reason why a lot of people are attracted to sport. Sport is such an easy thing in certain ways. You know what you're trying to do. Game of golf is complex, but you know exactly what the clear goal is. You know exactly in a game of rugby or netball or basketball or footy what the clear goal is. I think some students are working on some things where they don't understand why they're doing it. They don't have a because. They're not quite sure what the clarity of the goal is. So linked to this clear goal, staying in rectangle number 1, I'm going to give you a word in signing. Now, my signing teacher, Carol Chittleborough, born both deaf and speechless, she said, "One, I feel so sorry for you hearing speaking people because most of you are boring." Fair enough. When most of you talk, she said, you just talk. She said, but watch the deaf community. When they communicate, they give it all they've got. They bring their emotion, they bring their physicality. And she also said, if you don't know a word in sign language, you have permission to make it up. Or if you don't like a word in signing, you have permission to change it. So I'm going to give you a word which is not English in origin. So when you look up the Auslan Dictionary, you won't find a signing for it. But I have come up with a signing that we teach students wherever we go. Please join with me. Fingers and thumbs almost touching, but not quite. It goes like this. So once again, you've now got 45 seconds to explain to a table mate near you, and if somebody's alone, invite them in. What do you think that might be? Is Kaizen. Now, Kaizen, a Japanese word, although when I was presenting in China, they said to me, Glenn, originally, it's a Japanese word, centuries old, but originally it comes from Chinese symbols. And the Kai symbol means change or correct, and the Zen symbol means gently and gracefully. So Kaizen is a gentle, graceful process of ongoing change and correction. In Australia, we tend to call it continuous improvement. But that underestimates the power of it, because Kaizen is really attention to the tiny, an attention to the little details. And if you can't solve the big problem, you work on the bit you can do something about. If you can't spell the whole word, you work on the first syllable. So there's an element of Kaizen, of being able to understand where you are and looking for your next tiny little improvement. Kaizen is a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, a little bit of improvement every day. And then the next day, it's a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. I do radio every week, and we were talking about philosophies in life. I'm about to have Oscar Hammerstein III on my radio show. His grandfather wrote Oklahoma, wrote The Sound of Music, and we were asking people to comment on the philosophy in songs. So I played a little bit of Julie Andrews, Raindrops on Roses, etc., a few of my favourite things. And this chap had rung up and I said, I just want you to listen to this song and tell me what you think it means for you. And then I explained that one of the philosophies in life is at the end of your day to add up all the good celebratory things that had happened that day, to list down all the things that you appreciate in the day, particularly if you're having a tough time. List down all the things that you appreciate, all the good things of the day, and to celebrate them. And I said to this chap, does that make sense to you? And the beautiful way the world works on radio, he said, well, it does, he said. I'm a music teacher. He said, in every lesson, at the end of the lesson, I get the students to go back on the good things that they've done in that lesson. I get them to focus on the things that they did well and right, so when they're leaving the room, they're feeling that they're making the progress. That's Kaizen in action. Good teachers are doing it almost on a daily basis. We had the joy of doing a federal government program for 3 years where we'd go to country towns throughout all of Australia, and we'd work with the business people, the schools, the parents and the youngsters. Merimbula really took on board our stuff, and the 5-year-olds at Merimbula have embodied Kaizen. But I didn't think it was enough just to teach the 5-year-olds Kaizen in sign language. So I wrote a song. I believe in its original tune. And this is how the Merimbula youngsters start school every day.
Kaizen is a little bit, little bit, little bit. Kaizen is a little bit, improving every day. Let's have a really great day together.
Let's have a really great day together. They do my favourite word in sign language. If you take your hands, please, and rub them together. This is the word for enthusiasm, same word for optimism. But it's not like how we might define it, ooh, what can I get out of this? The way the deaf community define it is, let's get stuck in. Got a bit of a challenge here, let's get stuck in. I might not be able to solve the whole problem, but together with my mates, we'll be able to do something about it. And then they reach out for the word teamwork. In signing, if you take your hands again, please, form the Olympic rings, the concentric circles. But it's more powerful when you do it with others. So just reach out to the people on your table, please, and form some teamwork. You can let go whenever you feel like. I tried that with an all-male group of miners, and they're going, no way, pal. You know, I'm not going to touch him. I know where he's been. So the first thing is to have a clarity of goal. And then in that clear goal, to be able to Kaizen forward, to look for the tiny little improvements. The second aspect is slightly trickier in terms of a visual. In your second rectangle, I need you to draw something that would represent constant feedback for you. Now, when I do this with engineers, they draw feedback loops. It's kind of easy for them. So however you would define visually constant feedback, and even write the words constant feedback. So the fact is that when we're in flow, the activity we're doing is showing us that we're making progress. Think of Kumon mathematics. When you're doing Kumon, you are instantly seeing whether you're going forward and understanding the concept or whether you need to stay and still persevere with the concept. To still be there. Dare to be still is not just dare to be not moving. Dare to be still engaged with an activity until you understand it. Dare to be still there to work it through so you've got it. Constant feedback. Again, it's one of the things that sport, the reasons why for a lot of people sport actually teaches us something. We're getting constant feedback as we're doing our 3-point throws, and 3 are getting through or 2 are getting through or 4. We then make progress based on that information. so that a teacher can help a student be able to see this is where you're good, this is the next improvement, this is when, where we need a bit of a challenge here, let's work it through. Linked to constant feedback is this wonderful vocabulary word. 20 seconds to tell a person next to you, do you have a reference point for mondegreen? Do you have a context for this word? Tell your buddies, please, go. An extension of our vocabulary is 3 years older than me. It's as old as my brother Gary. Sylvia Wright, the journalist, invented or coined the word in 1954. She was writing an article about how the fact that her father loved to recite poetry. He knew stuff by heart. Again, we did a radio show on by heart. See, I sometimes think in education we throw out the baby and the bathwater, and then the next time we throw out the baby and the bathwater, and then we do it again. And some people think that rote is bad news or inadequate learning. It's one of the layers of learning. But rote just mentally is one thing, but rote by heart, when you learn something because you love it and you learn it so it's automatic to you, is just a beautiful thing. So we did a radio show based around by heart, and people rang up and recited things that they had learnt when they were 10, and now they're 70 and they still knew it fluently. It had stuck for them. And this is how Sylvia wrote, because she said her favourite poem that her father used to recite finished with, "Ye highlands and ye lowlands, where have ye been? They have slain the Earl of Murray and Lady Mondegreen." And she thought of the great sorrow of this tragic love affair between the Earl and the lady. In her world, it was bigger than Romeo and Juliet. It was just huge. But it was only as an adult that she actually saw the poem in writing for the very first time. And she realised then that her father had actually been saying, "They have slain the Earl of Murray and laid him on the green." But what she had heard was Lady Mondegreen. And it's a far more exciting poem as Lady Mondegreen. So a mondegreen are those things, when the principal says them, everybody interprets them in their own hearing. A mondegreen are those words that you've sung along to in songs for years, only to be told that they are not actually the correct songs. I am deaf in all upper registers and have been ever since I was about 5, so there's just certain sounds I've never heard. So I mishear certain things. For years, my favourite pop song was Bald-Headed Woman. I thought, what a cracker song. To write a pop song, to have a hit song about a bald-headed woman, how good is this? Bald-headed woman, bald-headed woman to me. One of my mates heard me singing along and he said, "You bloody idiot, it's more than a woman." But it's a far better song as Bald-Headed Woman. It's far, and every time you hear it from this day forward, it will now be Bald-Headed Woman. I was working up in the Yarrie mine site, 280 miners, and one of them comes up and talks about his favourite song, "Cheap Wine and a Three-Legged Goat." We mishear things. And of course, Queensland's not immune. Just at the time of the Queensland floods, the Rockhampton Bulletin ran with a front page headline of 30,000 pigs had been swept away in the flood. That weekend, 30,000 pigs had drifted down the Dawson River. It made it onto the TV news, it made it onto the statewide news. Only then did a journalist pick up on it and go, "That doesn't sound right." So he went back, found the original farmer and did the interview, and found out that the farmer had actually said 30 sows and pigs. 30,000 pigs, geez, that's a bucket load of pigs. So when the principal stands up and says, "We are a welcoming school," everybody interprets it in a certain way. And that's why in teaching, of course, we know the name of the game is clarification. We teach something and then we say, "Assume I'm an idiot. Teach it back to me." So you're teaching photosynthesis, you run through it and then you say to the student, "Now assume I'm an idiot and knew nothing about photosynthesis. Teach it to me so that I will get it. Teach it back to me." It's a wonderful thing for students to read something. It's a wonderful thing for students to be able to recite something. It's a wonderful thing. But how many of us in this room have ever passed an exam without fully understanding the subject matter? Sometimes what we're doing is we parrot it, but we don't get it. Now, in signing, to know is this. Take your thumb, please, and it goes to your brain. That's when you know stuff. But in the deaf community, they say it's got to go beyond knowing to owning it. To know something, but then to own it for the rest of you, and to do it, to use it, to put it into action. So I'm in love with the idea of students being able to know stuff, recite stuff, but to be able to then apply it, interpret it, and assume I'm an idiot. Okay, let me teach you this as if you knew nothing. Let me show you, if you're saying to your partner in life, on the way home, pick up these 4 things from the supermarket. It is then your responsibility to say, now assume I'm an idiot. What are the 4 things I've just told you to buy? Because we will have heard it wrong. Beer is what we would have heard, I am sure. The third rectangle, I'm going to get you to draw something into the third rectangle. The third factor of flow. And it comes down to what we call the challenge zone. So you might want to write the words challenge zone and draw this little graph. So you've got challenge and you've got skills. And it's such a simple and wonderful thing that Csikszentmihalyi said there is what we call the flow channel. And the flow channel is where our skills are matching the challenge. And constantly. So I was listening to the wonderful work of the singer Emmylou Harris. And Emmylou Harris, singer-songwriter, was talking about her dad. And her dad was actually confined, solitary confinement during the Korean War in Korea. But he had like a little handkerchief thing. And he managed to smuggle some thread and a needle into the solitary confinement with him. So what he would do is he would start to do little threading work in solitary confinement. He couldn't see, it was too dark, so he worked by feel. And he would give himself challenges of doing different threading and feeling it to see that he's getting it really fine. Then he would unthread it and do it again. He needed to find some way to keep himself challenged and engaged, otherwise he thought he would go mad. And this is one of the things, if students are sitting in class bored, they have to find a way inside themselves to up their own challenge. And better still, if the teachers can go, okay, any student who's bored, chances are they're not being challenged enough. So when we're sitting in boredom, we need new skills. Up your skill level, up the challenge. If we've gone too high in challenge, you'll have some students who go into high anxiety. It is imperative for every student to be able to have skills in being able to slow their heart rate down, monitor their breathing, be able to calm themselves, get themselves into I'm a bit panicking here, let me be able to be calm, work it through. Some of our best academic students fall in a heap because of anxiety. Anxiety seems to be the thing in our society. So if you're into anxiety, chances are you need to up your skills. And it might be some skills in helping students be still, being able to calm themselves, find some calm within themselves. So to me, anytime, you think of any boring job you've ever done, and teaching certainly wouldn't be it. But think of any boring job you've ever done, chances are to stay involved, you'd keep upping the challenge in some way. Up the challenge and then up your skills. Up the challenge and up the skills. Up the challenge and up the skills. To be able to find for each student that optimal level of performance. That's why when we set up the alternative upper school program in Western Australia, it was working with teenagers who really school hadn't met them, they hadn't met school. So we had to flip the timetable to really work with them individually to be able to make sure that we could set find out what their clarity of goals were, and if they didn't have a clear goal, our job was to help them get a clear goal. And then to find some way, we didn't know the model, but we were working with constant feedback, and then wherever they were was their starting point to up the next challenge and enjoy it and embrace it. Up the next challenge, enjoy it and embrace it. And part of this will not only be Kaizen, but will be this. You may not be familiar with this word because I recently made it up, but if Kaizen is about how better, Widezen is about how else. If Kaizen is about sharpening a particular crayon, Widezen's about using a different crayon. Teachers constantly need to not only Kaizen but Widezen. We will tend to fall back upon the crayons that we are strongest with, but they may not be the best crayons to reach a particular student. And sometimes schools are Kaizening an approach when it's not the best approach to Kaizen. We might need a whole different way to look at it, a whole different way of going about it. The best teachers I know are constantly challenging through how better, how else, how better, how else, how better, how else in our teaching. Not quite working for it this way, let's try that way. Working with a group of parents, and the parents said to me, I keep telling my teenager over and over and over again and they just don't seem to get it. And I said, well, stop telling them. Only a certain percentage of population learn by telling. Some people need to be told. We need a clarity. We need the definite analytical approach. I said, but try something a bit more innovative. Go up to your teenager and say, how many times have I told you? This is what I want you to do. Clean your room. Get down. I said, now, just do that to them once. I said, now, I don't believe in shaming people, but I swear to you this will work. You do that in front of your teenagers once, and then you say to them, if you don't clean your room, I'll do that in front of your friends. Absolutely works a treat. So there's always another crayon to use. It's the double helix, the Kaizen and the Wizen. The how better, how else, how better, how else. So we have clear goals, constant feedback, and what Csikszentmihalyi calls the challenge zone. And then linked to this how better and how else, linked to the Wizen, whole brain, whole body involvement. If you can find some way to draw an image that would mean whole brain, whole body involvement. That sometimes people are involved intellectually, but they leave their physical body behind. We know the physical body and movement is kind of essential. Now, it doesn't have to be frenetic movement, it can be very decent movement. Getting the heart rate of students up, helping students to be physically fit. We know that movement is not only good for physical fitness, but if you haven't read the book Spark by Dr. John Ratey, head of psychiatry at Harvard, John Ratey, R-A-T-E, Spark, the first chapter explains what happened to a down-and-out school as soon as they, in the very early years of heart monitors, were able to get 20 heart monitors donated to their school and would start to apply physical fitness to their students. And of course, what happened is not only did the students get engaged in physicality and up their heart rate and up their physical selves, but their mental application became so much better. And that's why I would not be true to the Csikszentmihalyi and the flow model if we didn't do some whole body, whole brain involvement. I need you, as best as possible, nothing in your hands, and to stand where you are. I then need you to rub your hands together in glee and to say to your table mates, I just so love singing. As, this happens to be a physical song. I managed to even teach this to Year 12s and the way to teach it to Year 12s is to say, you need to learn this because we're going to send you down to the Year 1s to teach the Year 1s this song. Then the Year 12s go down to the Year 1s believing that they're teaching the Year 1s. But of course the Year 1s are teaching the Year 12s. The song, I think it's an original tune. It goes, I got my whole body. And you have to do it with a bass voice, okay? The Lee Marvin in us to come, and whole brain. You'll catch on to the rest of it, okay? Join with me, 1, 2, 3. I got my whole body and whole brain. I got my whole body and whole brain. I got my whole body and whole brain, learning all as one. And then we go, ah-ra-da-da-da. No, you don't have to go, ah-ra-da-da. Take a seat, thank you. And just pat your buddy on the back and tell them how magnificent they were in doing that. Now, we have clear goals, constant feedback, the challenge zone, whole body, whole brain involvement. Whatever you've got thus far, show your partner some of your drawings, some of your notes. Look at what they've done, look at what you've done, chat it through. Is it making sense to you? In signing, of course, Australian signing is different than Vietnamese, different than American, different than German. Very dynamic language, the signing. In fact, West Australian signing is different than Victorian. I moved from WA to Victoria and discover that. Slight differences even with Queensland. But the word for thank you is fairly global all over in the deaf community. If you take your hand from the top of the chin, please, and with respect, move it to whoever you've been chatting with. Give them a thank you. Now, you do need to be very careful. It is from the top of the chin and not from underneath the chin. The importance of nuance. A Mediterranean background, you do that to an Italian or a Greek and they will kill you. So very important, the attention to detail, the ability to go Kaizen, accurately know where you are and move forward. The fifth rectangle and fifth factor of flow, the words are a sense of control. Now I'll give you a diagram to draw for this one, but it's a sense of control. So when I was talking about Emmylou Harris's father and in the Korean War doing his sewing, where he had no power, he took some power. Where they were trying to take everything away from him, he took control over something that he could do. Viktor Frankl, if your students aren't reading The Meaning of Life by Viktor Frankl, then they have to, I believe. Frankl survived 2 concentration camps during World War II, and he and his friends on the Shabbos, on the Friday evening, would sit down for a meal. They'd distribute the plates, they'd pour out the food, they would light the candles, they would sing Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. They would do their blessings and then they would have their meal. Except, of course, there were no plates, there was no food, there were no candles. They pretended that they were. The people looking on at them doing this said, why on earth are you doing this? Why waste your energy on this pretend thing? Frankl said, we need to take control over when we've got no control. The women in the book White Coolies turned into the film Paradise Road, and during World War II in confinement in camps in Indonesia that took to singing. And they had barely food, they had barely energy, and people would say to them, why sing? And they said, well, this is our way of getting some meaning, some control. The women who were singing, Viktor Frankl and his friends, they survived where others didn't. So to be able to gain a sense of control, popularised by, we lost Stephen Covey last week, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, 25 million copies sold, 1 million copies in audio, just truisms, little simple maxims. But in this one, he was actually quoting the work of Robert Greenleaf. And I need you to draw one circle, which is your circle of concern. So a student might be concerned about certain things. You might be concerned about certain things. We might be concerned about certain things when it comes to the environment. And we think it's such a big problem, what difference could I make? Within the circle of concern, Greenleaf said, there is a circle of influence. So you yourself might not be able to solve the whole problem, but you might know a few other teachers that can engage in it. You will know a few community members to be able to get enrolled. It's amazing what can happen through the power of teamwork and influence and reaching out for each other. And within that circle of influence, there is always a circle of action. So when a student is saying, I can't do this, I'm no good at doing this, I've never been, what difference will it make? Chunk it down to that tiniest little thing, to a circle of action that they can find some difference with, to find an improvement with. I remember in my first year out teaching, I had a parent come to me complaining about the way that I was assessing or marking her daughter's essays and stories. Anne Jacobs was the daughter's name. Anne fell in love with English when I was her teacher, but never fell in love with punctuation. She really struggled with punctuation. It would just be stream of consciousness writing, and spelling errors would be in every third word. And her mum was complaining that I wasn't marking every single word wrong. But to me it came down to the Kaizen thing, that I would pick certain words and really explore them. When I was a kid in Kalgoorlie, if I spelt a word incorrectly, the teacher used to mark it wrong with a big red cross. The Kaizen approach is to count the letters that are correct and to tick them. If a youngster gets 3 letters correct out of 8, and then tomorrow they get 7 letters correct out of 8, well, how good's that? So I'd explain that's what I was trying to do, not to mark. I didn't want Anne to have just red marks of everything wrong. I wanted to encourage her, but I also wanted her to be able to focus in on a couple of aspects every time that she could make a difference with, to give her a circle of action for her own Kaizen. I didn't know Csikszentmihalyi's model. Your best teachers won't know Csikszentmihalyi's model, but they'll be doing this all the time because it's part of seemingly what works. So linked to that, the sense of control, the next factor is actually the factor that is the indicator of flow. This tells us when and where we're in flow. So I need you to draw something that will represent time flies. Something that would represent time flying. And even write the words time flies. Csikszentmihalyi said, we know we're in flow because hours go by and it seems like it's minutes. My mum and dad are both 83 and they still go out into the garden and they can be working in the garden for 2-3 hours and they will swear to you it's been half hour. And it's been like that all of their life. They just really enjoy. And I guess because they're getting constant feedback when they're shaping the garden and working it through, it helps them to be in flow. If you've ever been designing a lesson and you look at your watch and you think, geez, it couldn't be that late, because you've just been so engaged in it, then you're in flow. The opposite, of course, is when you're looking at your watch going, oh, geez, is this meeting not over yet? Oh, when things seem to run for hours and hours, but in fact it's only been 10 or 20 minutes. So Csikszentmihalyi also said something that I think is extremely important when it comes to educators and when it comes to teaching. He said, you have to have flow in your work. You've got to have some aspect of flow in your work. So a teacher may not love every aspect of teaching. It's how you handle all the other stuff that wraps around it that may be kind of vital. But there should be some aspects that they absolutely are passionate about. But likewise, he said, you've got to have flow outside of your work as well. He said, interestingly, some people think that they'll go to work and then they'll go home and they'll go, oh, I can't wait till I get home. I'm just going to sit on the couch and do absolutely nothing. I'm going to sit there, have a beer and do nothing. But most happy people don't go home, sit and do nothing. They might sit and do nothing for 5 minutes, have a little bit of a rest, and then they'll go out to the back shed where they're building a boat. You know, they'll be involved in some incredibly complex thing, but they just don't see it as work because they love doing it. And that's why it's absolutely vital for people in education to have something in their life that is not a teaching thing, that they just love doing. So quick chat with your buddies. What's something you do that brings you flow in your work, that you absolutely are engaged in your workplace, but also what's something outside of work that gives you flow? Tell your teammate, please. An additional signing to throw into our vocabulary. We have our Kaizen, we have our gracious thank you, an additional one. If you can put your hands out, please. It goes like this. And that is the signing for letting go. And it's absolutely one of the most important things for anyone working in education. Teachers, when you're up in front of a group, and it might be you're up in front of a group working 1 to 4, it might be you're working 1 to 5, 1 to 25, you might be addressing the whole school assembly of 1,000 people. It might be that you're up in front of a camera doing an iPod casting for a podcast to download, but you're still up in front, you're on your feet. And it's believed that the ancient part of our brain goes, oh, you're on show here, you're a bit dangerous. As soon as you're up and out front, people are looking at you, it's drawing attention to you. So part of your brain goes into that, let's be on our wits, let's be on our feet. And there is a sense of anxiety to it that keeps us sort of the adrenaline flowing. And also, when you're out on lunch duty, there's all kinds of things happening. Then you've got an angry parent that's turning up. Then you've got a colleague that you've got to address a difficult thing. You've got so many things going on. And you're very, very professional. You do not get angry in your workplace. You're just absolutely calm and beautiful. You get home and somebody says, how was your day? Ah, bloody, give me a minute. Why do we save up our worst behaviour for those that we love the most? It is absolutely vital before we go home, that we do some letting go. We have to either go for a walk, do some yoga, have some friends who are not teachers. There are people out there. Some of them will even talk to you. Go and kick a footy, whatever it is, unless we do that letting go. Because we do stay awake at night, and teachers are notorious for stammering through the term and then in the holidays getting ill. Because we hold on to stuff. So the letting go, it can't be something that you save to do in the holidays. It has to be something constant and daily. And likewise, I'd put in again, based on the work of Rati and Spark, our kids need to be moving. So even though this is Dare to Be Still, And a student needs to learn how to be still, how to be focused, how to still remain on task. But part of the stillness they will find is getting more movement in their life, getting more activity in their life. We're supposed to take at least 10,000 steps a day, so at least 10,000. And some of them need to be quite active steps. Doesn't have to be running, but quite active steps. Swinburne University in Melbourne did a test on the office workers from 2 different organisations in Melbourne and came up with the average number of steps that they were taking on a working day. Quick guessing game with your people next to you. How many steps do you reckon it was? It was 2,500. 2,500 steps on a working day. Most teachers would do more than that. But sometimes we will fall less than our 10,000, just to be able to make sure that we're walking and moving and stepping. At a conference like this, it'd be wonderful in the afternoon break or the luncheon break, not just to stand still having a cuppa, but get a couple of mates and just go for a little stroll. Walk and talk and work things through. Get some of the steps up. And of course, at this convention centre, you can all get your uphill steps up every time you're walking up the stairs and working things through. The 7th factor, which will leave me one to play with this afternoon, the 7th factor is possibly the most difficult to represent visually, at least for me. And it's one of the vital and important things of flow. So I need you to find some way to draw that as you're in flow, you lose your sense of self-attention and somehow you gain self-esteem. So you're not worried about anyone looking at you. You're not worried about, pressure, people are looking at me. You are just into what you're doing. Those years when Pat Rafter barely lost a game or a set in tennis, he was in flow. If you're playing a game of golf and you're just in that game of golf and it's going well. But if you're playing a game of golf and you're about to tee off and 20 people come and stand next to you to look at you teeing off, and you go, oh, there's 20 people looking at me teeing off, don't hit it into the lake, chances are you're out of flow. So there's something in the flow thing that when students are involved and engaged, that their self-esteem grows because they're seeing progress, they're seeing improvement in what they're doing. I am certain that the aim of school is not to have students come out of school feeling worse about themselves than when they went into school. It should be a self-esteem journey. And I believe these factors of flow are so important for it. So knowing that, and knowing that we've got one more to go this afternoon before I do a few little other things and then handball to the wonderful Stephen Lundeen, the Savo, I need you to simply have whatever you've been taking notes on, whether it's an iPad or whether it's your piece of paper and doing your drawings, have that in your hand and stand up, please. This is called the Art Gallery Walk. I need you to place your notes against your chest so anything that's got words on it can come out to other people. And you are to start walking around the room smiling. You are not allowed to stop and you're not allowed to talk. Walk and smile, go. Walk and smile. And rough teams of 3. Rough teams of 3. Can be 2, can be 4. Compare your drawings to each other. Look for similarities, look for differences, take each other through it. And I need you, when I say go, to explain to each other the 7 factors that we've done so far in flow. Go, run them through. What are they? Of course, as you would know, some folk would have missed some of them. So you would ask yourself, why did I miss some of the ones that I missed? Some folk would have been able to see the pictures that they drew. Who actually could remember because of some of the images? Who could actually go, oh, in the first rectangle over here we had, in the second, that's visual spatial, of course, inside your brain. Some other people would be going, oh, gee, that drawing stuff didn't work for me, but I remember clear goals because of such and such, and I remember first thing and the last thing. It tells us something about learning styles, which of course flows into this message. Later this afternoon, we will fill in the blank of this one here and bring the model home. So say, I think it's something you can actually step through with students, you can step through with staff members, and we'll explain some applications later on. Before I conclude, two quick, very, very quick things. One is to show your buddy any of the sign language you can remember that we've done today. Quickly show them some of the signing. If you recalled words like a gracious thank you and a beautiful rendition of Kaizen, it means, of course, that you're a deeply spiritual, loving human being. On the other hand, if the first word you can remember was this, then you are a sicko. If you'd like to take your hands, just rub them together and say to your teammates, well, I'm really looking forward to this afternoon. Thank you very, very much for playing. Thank you very much.